Chapter 6. Bryce Kensington Loses Control. Bryce Kensington had always believed that danger announced itself. Alerts, shouting, and an outright warning, a moment to decide what to do. That belief died quietly somewhere between the service tunnels and the reptile house. They were running, not with direction, not with any shared plan, but because standing still felt like waiting to be chosen. The zoo no longer felt like a place built for humans. Corridors felt like death traps, corners felt watched. Every echo came back wrong, stretched, and doubled, as if the building itself were breathing and waiting for their mistakes. Only 4 of them were left. Bryce, Mark, Jonah, Kyle. Ethan and Jason were gone, and no one said their names. Kyle's breathing rasped loudly and uncontrollably, his phone flashlight swinging wildly, illuminating walls smeared with grime and streaked with something darker. This isn't how it was supposed to go, he muttered again and again, like repetition might reset reality. Bryce snapped, "Shut up," but the word carried no weight. It fell flat, useless. They burst through a fire door and skidded to a stop at the edge of the aquatic wing. The smell hit first. Stagnant water, rot, a heavy, ancient odor that crawled into Bryce's throat and stayed there. Mark slowed, dread rising cold along his spine. Why does it smell like that? Bryce didn't answer. He already knew. Emergency lights cast the space in dull crimson. Glass tanks lined the walls, their contents hidden in shadow. Somewhere, water sloshed lazily, rhythmic and patient. Then something moved. A ripple disturbed the surface of a containment pool to their right. Kyle's flashlight lingered on it too long. "Oh, hell no," Kyle whispered. The crocodile rose slowly, like the water itself was lifting into shape. Massive, scarred, its eyes broke the surface last, flat, ancient, locked-on movement. The enclosure gate hung open. Jonah took a step back, then another. No, 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 no. The crocodile lunged. It crossed the distance in a blur of muscle and teeth. Jonah screamed as it caught his leg mid-step. The sound that followed was wet and final, bones snapping like kindling. Jonah hit the tile hard, fingers clawing uselessly at the floor, slick with water and blood. "Help!" The crocodile dragged him backward with horrifying efficiency. Jonah's hands scraped the edge of the pool once, twice. Then he was gone. The water churned violently. Then everything was still. Mark doubled over and vomited. Kyle slid down the wall, sobbing, palms smeared red. "We're going to die," he gasped. "We're all going to die." Bryce couldn't breathe. This wasn't a shock anymore. This was comprehension. This was cause and effect finally catching up. "We can't stay here," Bryce rasped. His voice sounded wrong, thin, broken. "Move, we have to move." They ran again. Past darkened exhibits, past warning signs that suddenly meant everything, past tanks where unseen things shifted and watched. They burst into the reptile house viewing corridor and slammed the door shut behind them. Mark fumbled with the lock, his hands shaking so badly he dropped the keys twice before finally forcing it closed. "This room," Mark panted. "This room's sealed, reinforced glass." Bryce slid down the wall until he hit the floor. His head dropped into his hands. "I didn't think," he started. Kyle laughed, high and cracked. "You didn't think." Before Bryce could answer, something hit the glass. Not hard, but testing. A shadow passed across the far side of the viewing window. Mark froze. What is that?" The shape resolved slowly. Massive shoulders, dense black fur, long arms moving with terrifying control. The gorilla stepped into view. It was larger than Bryce remembered, larger than it should have been. Its eyes were dark and alert, scanning, thinking. Kyle whimpered, "It can't get in, that glass." The gorilla struck the window. The impact spider-webbed the glass. Kyle screamed. The second strike shattered it. Glass exploded inward. The gorilla surged through the opening with a roar that shook the room, landing on its knuckles, breath booming. Mark ran. The gorilla caught him easily. There was no intent to kill, only fear and overwhelming force. The animal reacted to movement and noise, not choice. It seized Mark and slammed him into the wall once, twice, as if trying to remove an obstacle it didn't understand. The second impact drove the breath from Mark's lungs. He slid down the concrete without a sound, his body folding in on itself at an angle that wasn't right. The gorilla stumbled a step back, his chest heaving, eyes wide and unfocused, as startled by the result as anything else. Kyle tried to crawl away. The gorilla turned. Bryce watched, frozen, as it seized Kyle and hurled him across the room. Kyle hit the spider enclosure hard and slid down, unmoving. Silence followed. The gorilla stood amid the wreckage, with its chest heaving. It turned and lumbered back through the shattered window, disappearing into the chaos beyond. Bryce was alone. He didn't realize he was crying until his vision blurred. He stayed there, shaking, surrounded by broken glass and bodies that had been alive an hour ago. Blood pooled at his knees. Somewhere nearby, snakes rustled inside cracked enclosures, disturbed by the noise. The zoo groaned around him. Metal slammed in the distance. An alarm finally screamed somewhere far away, cut short almost immediately. Bryce pulled his phone out with numb fingers. No signal. Of course. He laughed weakly, then gagged. His father's voice echoed in his head, fail-safes, redundancies, control, and for the first time Bryce understood how fragile all of it had been. Not the systems, not the zoo. How thin the illusion of control really was when it had rested on his confidence instead of caution. Sirens wailed in the distance now. Helicopters thudded overhead, their searchlights slicing through the shattered glass ceiling in wild, desperate sweeps. People were coming. Too late for everyone who had followed him, trusted him, believed he knew what he was doing. Bryce curled in on himself on the blood-slick floor, arms wrapped around his knees, shaking so hard his teeth rattled. The smell of iron and reptile musk clung to him, thick and inescapable. This wasn't bravery. This wasn't leadership. It had been showing off. Proving he was untouchable. Proving he mattered. For the first time in his life, Bryce Kensington wasn't in control of anything, and there was no one left to blame but himself. Outside the reptile house, the zoo, alive, furious, and unleashed, continued to spill into the city, tooth and scale and muscle pushing into streets that had never been meant for it. And Bryce was alone now. Not because the world had abandoned him. Because he had dragged everyone else down with him.